Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm here with Andre and Kelsey. We are with the Tampa Hillsborough County Public Library. This evening's program is one of everyone's favorite. It's Books That Changed My Life. This week's program is being presented as part of National Library Week. Tonight, we're going to share some of the books that changed our lives.
Okay, so some of these books and some of these titles come through Hoopla, which is one of the library's digital resources for ebooks, audiobooks, and comics, as you can see on the screen. And so definitely check out that resource to get a whole range of materials. Okay.
So the first book we have is by the best-selling author Mitch Albom, The Stranger in the Lifeboat. This is an inspirational novel of hope and faith. The novel begins with an expensive yacht destroyed by an explosion and which sank into the Atlantic off the coast of Africa, with only 10 people surviving and trapped on a life raft. They pull a stranger out of the water who has seemingly come from nowhere. He claims to be the Lord, and he says he can only save them if they all believe in him. Each person on the boat must decide if he is right or not. The story is told through a journal found in the empty life raft when it washes ashore a year later, plus the actions taken by the policeman who is involved. I really enjoyed this book because it got me thinking about my own doubts, disappointments, my faults, and failures. It also allowed me to see hope, faith, and love from other perspectives. This would be a great book for anyone who is looking for a mesmerizing, thought provocative, and uplifting story that will stay with them long after the final page has turned. The second book I chose was The Proudest Blue, and it's by Ibtihaj Muhammad, and it was published by Little Brown and Company. This picture book is about strength and pride to overcome hurtful words and deeds of others. Faza, the narrator, she narrates her sister's first day at school as well as her first day of wearing the traditional Muslim headscarf. Throughout the book, we see how Faza draws on her faith, her mother's wisdoms, and watches her sister navigate her would-be tormentors. This was such a fun and worthy read because it not only shows the bonds between sisters, it also offers helpful strategies kids can use to move through being hurt by others as well. And now I'm going to turn this over to Andre.
All right, so my first book that I selected is Goodnight, Punpun. It's more of like a series than it is just an individual book. There's 13 volumes, which is kind of short if you're looking at like manga, but yeah. Besides that, it's a slice of life drama comedy, like kind of like a coming of age by Inio Asano. He's an acclaimed manga writer over in Japan. It focuses on the titular Punpun Punyama and the hardships he and his family kind of go through during this period of time in Japan known as the Lost Decades. And it's kind of, it depicts his growth spanning from a troubled childhood into like a very troubled young adulthood, kind of from the ages of 7 to like 25. Blends a lot of surreal imagery and alienating kind of like paneling and stuff like that to characterize this kind of culture in Japan, and it does it very effectively. It uses these visuals to define like the long-lasting effects of the society, kind of both on like a societal and individual level. This era was characterized by a huge amount of economic crises, families living in poverty, homeless children trying to work to survive, religious groups indoctrinating citizens for using as scams. There's a very major conceit to the series that how do you kind of become a well-adjusted individual in a society that kind of pits this against you? Personally, I find this as a great read for millennials that kind of grew up post 9/11, kind of mirroring a lot of the cultural degradation that occurred and the extreme polarizing of ideologies in the years since. It's very emotionally heavy. I would not hesitate to give this a trigger warning. A lot of the series focuses on the effects of physical and verbal abuse, poverty, infidelity, religious extremism, and existential angst. Yeah. My next book is Weather by Jenny Offill. It is a very, very different novel compared to Goodnight, Punpun. It is centered on Lizzie Benson, a former grad student that now works for a university as a librarian without a LIS degree. That's a very big deal if you don't know that. The novel kind of opens up in media res of her balancing being a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a wife to all of the people that kind of surround her, and she doesn't get a lot of breathing room for herself. Kind of following this, she accepts an offer to work as to work under her former mentor, answering fan mail for an up-and-coming podcast called Hell and High Water, during which she kind of becomes immersed in this kind of like polarized world where she's slowly realizing that there's two extremes, and both extremes disagree with each other but agree on what is actually happening. You kind of get the sense that she's kind of immersing herself in the society that doesn't really give her the peace of mind that she really needs. The writing is very short and tense. Structure is kind of weird. It doesn't really come together very often. It's very like vignette-y, or it's a good way. You get to see glimpses of her life is a very, very good way of putting it. As far as tone goes, it's very emotionally stagnant and terse. The novel plays with a lot of existential angst, ennui, and kind of the anxiety of a lost future. So now I will turn it over to Kelsey.
Okay, so my first book that I chose is Mythology, Timeless Tales of Gods and Heroes, and this is by Edith Hamilton, and it is now in its 75th year. This is the 75th anniversary edition, and it was originally published by Little Brown and Company and published in 1942. And I read this book in 2010. I found a used book when I was at like a book sale, and I looked through it. I was like, this seems really cool. So it has in it Greek and Roman mythology, as well as a bit of Norse. So you learn about the different Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. And you also learn like the creation myths, and then tales of adventure and romance, thinking like, I think like Cupid and Psyche, or like Hercules. And there's also about like the Trojan War, so material that comes from like the Aeneid or the Iliad. And it also has a bit of Norse mythology in it as well, so you can learn about Thor and Loki. And this has been used for decades and generations as kind of a primer for mythology, to be first like introduced to it. And a lot of classrooms have used this. And this edition has beautiful illustrations by Jim Turney. And it's just an awesome book to just get lost in, of all of these old tales that were written so long ago, and yet they feel so present right now and relevant. Next slide, please. The second book that I chose is The Book Thief, which is by Markus Zusak, and it was originally published in 2005. And I first read this book in 2012 when I was in my 10th grade English class, and we were doing a unit on World War II and the Holocaust. So this is a bit of a heavier book. In Europe, the book is an adult fiction, and over here it's young adult, but there are like scenes of like death, and so possibly a trigger warning. The story has an unusual narrator. The narrator actually is death personified. So he's telling the story of this little girl named Liesel Memminger, who is the book thief, and it focuses on her life in Germany during World War II and like the rise of Hitler. And she has, the books that she finds are very particular to her life's journey. So the book that she first picks up is called The Gravedigger's Handbook, and I won't spoil it, so you'll have to read to find out why that's relevant to her. But she has several books that she takes, and along the way, like, she makes friends with this boy named Rudy, and she grows closer to her foster family, the Hubermans, I think I'm pronouncing that right. And it's a great book for people who love literature, who love books. And you'll see yourself in Liesel a lot. And that was first published. Okay, yeah. So that's it for my slides, as for my books. So let's go to the next slide.
There we go.
And let's see if there are any questions here. So it doesn't look like we have any questions right now. I do want to mention, I didn't say it out loud, but we do have a handout that you can look at all of the books that we talked about in this session, and you can download the PDF if you go to your control panel and go all the way down to handouts, and you could press that and download it. So a few more minutes to see if anybody has any questions. Don't be shy. Because if not, then we will be done for the day. And we hope you guys enjoyed. And Andre, if you want to take it away.
All right. So if you guys want to contact us at the library, you can contact us at 813-273-3652 or on our website at hcplc.org/contact. You can also submit your library stories at hcplc.org/about/stories. And finally, for any upcoming classes and events, you can check our website at hcplc.org/events. Thank you for coming today, guys, and have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye.